Now, the PM and the government looked a bit punch-drunk, didn't they? I think everyone would admit to that after the voice referendum. And the loss of the voice referendum. It's amazing how much more confidence he appears to have, even just anecdotally, looking at him, listening to him.
There's nothing like some success, is there? Like, success breeds success. And he was in all sorts of trouble, I think, after The Voice, because they'd spent months defending an initiative which was going absolutely nowhere. So the real issues that were concerning people at the time, particularly the economy, were not, in their eyes, being addressed. So now he's on to an issue that people are concerned about, and he's being seen to be doing something about it. And the cost of living seems to be getting better because of the changes in interest rates coming down by a full couple of % over a period of time. So that's all good news for the government, and it gives them some momentum, something that they can build on. And of course, the opposition had been wanting to make a big noise about the broken promise and so forth. Very hard, and now they've got to move on.
Yeah.
And that's tough too, because when you feel like, oh, I should have been able to make more of this, there's a temptation to stay on the old issue and try to wring a little bit more out of it. Best to move on.
Now, we saw the IR laws, the controversial industrial relations laws pass, but the coalition have been cautious, and understandably cautious when you look at history and the work choices. I know it's a long time ago, but it still hangs there, doesn't it?
It does. Work choices was a huge issue for the Howard government. It hurt. It divided the country. It was something which successive Liberal governments didn't want to go and revisit. And of course, in the case of Dutton, you've got a would-be Prime Minister who wants to ingratiate himself to working Australians. And some of these reforms that have been talked about, for example, not being able to call workers after hours, giving them the ability to turn off the phone.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Because you sort of think of some of these other IR laws that predated that were predating mobile phones and the ability to be, to be contacted at any point, at any time of day.
That's right, and I think Dutton has to have one eye to workers out there who would be looking at those changes and saying, yeah, that's not a bad thing. Why should I have to be rung, 5 and 6 times over the weekend on my own time without getting a cent in my pocket for doing it? And there have been some studies done which suggest that workers are now spending a lot of free time on behalf of the boss, because they've got their phones there and they can be contacted at any time. So not the worst measure in the world. It could be a tricky one to implement. There obviously going to have to be a lot of exceptions to it, like emergency workers and so forth. But I think the spirit of it isn't bad.
What about Barnaby Joyce? Look, I think we all remember us politicals, those that are addicted to what happens in Canberra, and I must admit I put myself in that queue. I'm glad cameras haven't followed my every movement in my life, because I haven't always been innocent. But boy, oh boy, it's almost like a mini-series, his life, isn't it? We all remember Malcolm Turnbull coming out and almost talking to him like he was a school kid.
Yeah, and you saw that play out in Nemesis and the residual anger that exists there. But look, I think in some ways, Barnaby Joyce sort of almost enjoys it. He likes playing the buffoon, the character who and who hasn't fallen over and had to make a phone call from the prone position on the way home?
I've done some things. I don't know if I've quite done that. Now, how damaging was the Joe Biden appearance yesterday? So he's come out. He doesn't do a lot of media, and never has, even when he was vice president. But like when you're coming out to try and say how good your memory is.
That was about as bad as it gets. The one issue that really worries Democrat-leaning voters is his memory. The special prosecutor comes out, exonerates him from any criminal activity, and that
should have been the focus.
And that should have been the focus. But of course, it then went to this whole issue about his memory, which is a bigger political issue for him than any documents that he may not have accounted for properly, which is what the special prosecutor was looking at. His memory is a huge problem. And then in the course of the press conference, to mix up the names of 2 leaders, you know, the Mexican and the Egyptian, they're not exactly too close.
It was glaring, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a few kilometres.
All you can say is that, you know, they both have border issues.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe that was something that was preoccupying him. I don't know, but it is a devastating moment actually for his re-election prospects. I wonder whether this is also a moment when he chooses to reflect on whether he really has got the confidence of the country when it comes to his memory and his ability to go forward as a president in such an important role. I don't know, but wow, it was a stark reminder that we're dealing with an old president.
Yeah, and the challenge there, and we mentioned it, we talked to Christian Daytok in America before, was the timing. I know we're February to November, but that's not a long time in the US political cycle. It's always good to talk to you, Bruce. We'll do it again soon.
You too.
Thanks mate.
Tim.
Appreciate it.